This is Test Case Scenario with me, your host, Jason Baum. This podcast is the definitive hub for knowledge and stories in the software testing and development communities. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button and let's dive straight into the episode. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Test Case Scenario. I'm one of your hosts, Jason Baum. Joining me, as always, Nikolai Avalokin. Welcome back, Nikolai. And we have a very special guest today, Paloma Oliveira. Paloma joins us from Sauce Labs. Paloma's on our growth team. Paloma is technically a growth engineer. She's also a FOSS advocate. She is also a PyLadies Berlin organizer. She's a Frauenloop mentor. She is a past artist, always an artist. You are very artistic. Paloma, it's so great to welcome you to the podcast finally, because we've been talking about having you on for a long time. We're always like, when is this going to happen? Paloma is in Germany, and so that makes coordinating schedules difficult across the world, but by means of modern day technology where we're somehow able to connect our computers at the same time and record this episode. So thank you, Paloma, for hopping on. Fun fact, Paloma used to be on our DevRel team, the community team, with us many moons ago. So it's really great to be able to have another wonderful conversation with Paloma about open source, which is always our favorite topic to go and talk about, right?
100% all the time, always a favorite topic.
Our first time meeting in person was at an open source conference, All Things Open, which is a spectacular conference in Raleigh, North Carolina in October. Highly recommend it if you've never been. So many amazing conversations. And you're going to be speaking there again this year, right?
Yeah, it would be really great to see you finally, maybe the whole team there this year.
That's correct. I'm forcing everyone to go. Actually, we've all applied to speak, and I believe several of us will be speaking, which is awesome.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. What's your topic going to be?
I propose to mediate very important but very intense debate about open source sustainability.
That sounds awesome. I can't wait. I can't wait to hear it. Your talks are always fantastic, especially the panels that you do or host. So that's going to be especially fun. And Nikolai, you're going to be there, right?
I would love to be there. And if I can make it, I'll make it. I've heard only great things about it, so I can't wait to go.
That's right. Well, let's dive in. We're going to talk open source, so I guess that was relevant to our conversation. But I really just wanted to talk to you, Paloma. Let's talk about what you're doing right now, your work, and you're volunteering for several different things, but I believe you're involved now with a program that's going to send you to the UN. Am I getting that right?
You're getting that right. And every time I hear that, I'm like, really? I have to stop and think like, no, that's too fancy. But yes, it is correct. And I'm super excited about that. But more than excited, I am heartwarmed that that's happening.
So tell us, what is the program? How did you get the invite? And can people go to this? Tell us more. I'm so curious.
That's one of the things what I love about open source is always open. So yes, everyone can register and go. It's free. It will be in the headquarters of United Nations in New York. You just need to register because it is very bureaucratic. There's a lot of security issues.
Can't imagine why.
No, still cross my mind, any possibility, New York. Anyway, people can go. It's free. And I recommend people to go because the agenda, it's more packed than I wish because we're expecting about 800 people from around the globe who are very important. Those are the people changing the world across the globe. And they will be there in the same room to create magic. That's the intention, right? It's when you're in the same room, you know this person that has the things that you need and that needs the thing you can offer. And this is how you change the world. in short words.
So how do you change the world? Well, first, the event is Ospo's for Good Symposium, and it's a multi-day conference, right? It's from July 9th. And what are the dates?
July 9 and 10 will be the official dates held in the UN headquarters. And in the 11th, we'll have a fringe event that will be outside of the UN. So we have a little more freedom. Will be a lot of workshops divided in themes for people beginning that don't know how to set up their own Ospo. And so there will be a lot of mentorship on that. Ospo in academia, so connections for people in science in academia, and for social good and policymakers. There will be more sit-down table discussions, while the UN official event date, there's a lot of key speakers, and there's a little bit more formatted program. Did I say the dates? 9, 10, 11 July. Those are the dates.
Yes, 9th, 10th, and 11th of July.
Paloma, I was going to ask, what's the goal and what are the outcomes that are going to come out from this conference?
The goal is to use the power of collaboration way beyond just software to push synergies or cooperations across the globe. So finding your local, but your global in the same place to actually push social change. This is the main goal. We have some cases where we're based at. I really love the case from Ospo++, which is one of the organizers. They started in Baltimore. This is what hooked me up, and this is how all started for me, at least. In the Ospo++, they identified that in Baltimore, they had several economical issues, and they got together, I think it was Johns Hopkins and some historical Black colleges, and they got together and say, well, there's, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I understand in the United States of America situation is that you have some fundings depending on the rate of certain colleges. And the historical Black colleges, known for big, if people do not know, in the United States history, there was a big apartheid till not so long. And those colleges were fundamental for people of color to have a proper education. And nowadays they still exist because it foments a lot of community around it, but they do not have funding because their rates are always very low. So they just cannot receive fundings. In Baltimore, they got together and say, let's fix that, because while we don't change that, we have a historical and systemic issue that will never improve, which is racism. So they got together and they were like, how can we do to improve? And they put a lot of stakeholders with that intention, because they identified that in Baltimore specific, that's what needed to change in order to change their economical situation of the city and improve the quality of life of the city for everyone. And they got together and the rates are starting to improve. They are still not one or like at the highest, but they did improve in the past years. So that's a direct way. How can we collaborate? And it is for the benefit of something that I identify. And from that, the whole city gets better. There's less violence because there's better work situations. So there's economic growth, there's less violence. But you got the idea, right? That's what's happening. And we start to do that in Berlin with the same idea. Well, what are the deficits that we have in Berlin? And that you can create corporations and put people inside of the same room, what we're calling breakfast clubs. And we've been doing that for a few months now to understand what is the situation. We're identifying, well, there's a lot of refugees in Germany. That's our main situation. A lot of people that are starting their life. And Berlin is multinational. There's 45%, I believe, of the people that are not from Germany that live there. So we have a very multicultural situation. And there's the need for digitalization in Germany, for example. There's a lot of fundings from the government for we stop receiving letters and papers and make it all more digital to improve systems. And there's a lot of community people doing so many different things siloed. And then we're like, well, there's so many interesting things going on here. It is the birth of the hacker spaces. It's in Berlin. There's so many interesting things that happen in the city. So why can't we get together and make those people talk? And we see so many, even now, like at PyCon, PyData, I saw this amazing talk from one of the government's institutions that are doing these amazing open source things that are not talking with the Center of Open Source Competence in the city. They were like, oh, what? Let's put them in the same table and improve that. So this is what it's all about. It's creating this collaboration that way beyond software, way beyond what we usually think of the code, although digital and software is everywhere now, and we cannot live without being mediated by software, but it's way beyond that scope. I speak a lot and I can talk about that for hours, so stop me.
No, it's all fantastic.
It makes sense to me. I love the social change aspect. What I still don't understand is how it ties back to open source. Is the goal to bring open source contributors together to figure out how to implement this kind of social impact and also digitalize, one of those words, Berlin?
Open source software gave us the methodology to understand how can we work asynchronously, globally, and towards a common goal. From this open source methodology and using software to solve lots of the needs that can be solved with software, we can do two things. We can put together competent technical people to bring solutions that can more easily support social issues, but we can also benefit from the methodologies we learn to implement these collaborations in things that goes way beyond code.
I think that's so cool because a lot of people think open source is just submitting code and here's some free software. And it goes so much further than that. And you've always been such a proponent of everything, all the other things and the importance of it. And I love the fact that you're, as a group, basically saying, this concept works here. Why can't it work here? And I don't know if anyone else is doing that. I feel like what's really cool is that you have something completely unrelated. Here you are, open source developers, and you're like, this process works for us. Let's help make change. I think that's pretty cool. Is this the first time this is being done, or has this been done before?
That's the second year. It happened last year. I was not involved last year. It was way smaller. 30 people was way smaller. And this year, especially, there's so much going on, at least in US too, but in Europe's scope, for example, what is pushing, there's a really big push from the top down. There's been a law being starting really soon called the Cyber Resilience Act that will push much more responsibility for open source from the consumption, maintenance, and usage. So that's why this topic has become necessary, not just optional, but foundational. I do think it's an error when we see technology in general. I don't know why we don't learn that in schools, but I think we should. But how that directly impact our lives. And there's a really good short article called Do Artifacts Have Politics? It's a really, really good article from Langdon Wiener. And what he does is saying, well, there's this case of this bridge. And in this bridge that was built, people were just technical. It's just a bridge. What does it mean? Well, that bridge allowed just Mia to hop in because it was so short that buses couldn't go through. That means if you cannot allow public access to a certain places, you will create an elite place that only cars and only Mia can go through. It would be just for dogs because it was not thought for people that, or in that case of the Wiener said in the article, can go, you cannot have public transport, you can only allow cars. People without cars cannot go. And what does it mean? That changes all the aspects. And I see a lot of that in software, for example, or in this case with digitalization. If you don't give the tools, or if the tool were not thinking about the user or which kind of user, who can access or not, it is a big issue. And people are just taught to think, no, it is a technical issue. Well, the technical is used by people. And how is that directly affecting people's life?
Awesome. It's so outside the normal conversation, I feel like, that we have about open source projects in general, because it's not focused on solving one problem. right? A lot of times I feel like with these open source tools, we're solving a problem. This is like, hey, we're going to step outside of that and we're going to solve several problems that are completely unrelated to the problem that got us here in the first place.
It is, but it also, this is why I've been defining myself more as a FOSS advocate more than open source. Historically, there's political definition, the difference in between free software, free and open source software, and open source. And free had always been problematic because people confused that with not having the obligation to pay, and there's nothing to do with money. It is a very deep political movement that was decades before, more than a decade before the open source term, that says, no, we understand the software, we run people's life, that will become really important for everyone. So we have to, from the base of that revolution that's going on, we have to assure people's freedom. And user freedom means, for example, not being locked in and not having the freedom to modify. The best example that I like is, so if it's not free, and you should see from the educational perspective, if you go to school and the software is not free, you're only teaching people how to buy the new version or to buy something that a vendor says you have to learn. While if it's free, and if you're using that in school, you understand how the software works. So you're not a passive user. You're someone that is deeply understanding the structures and have the freedom to change whatever your needs. I really like to think from the school's perspective. And this is, I think nowadays, especially after so much advocacy for data privacy, for me, it's the how I compare thinking about free software. So, well, whoa, yes, there's a lot to do with that. There's about my own personal freedom and rights that it's really connected with how it's being used and how my decision or how that will directly influence my choices. So it's not just about transparency. It's not about just seeing the code. It's about fundamental human rights, I would say. And that's connected with the software history, because open source, it's so mainstream now. And it's since the 70s, this discussion, or probably the 80s, beginning of the 80s. The GNU license was in 82, 84. It's been there for 40 years now, in the beginning of the software revolution. We just decided to forget for practical reasons.
I think some points that you make to connect open source to society, I've never thought about that before. And I think that's really cool. Like, it's exactly what Jason was talking about. When I've thought of open source, I thought of code to solve technical challenges, like a small challenge. I've never thought about it as solving societal level issues. And when you talk about it, and I think about it, to me, when open source is done well, it represents a very cool community, almost like a little small society where people collaborate with each other from across the globe, probably with little to no financial incentive. They do it just out of the passion and goodness of their hearts because they believe in a better world. And so they're collaborating on this thing that is enabling other people to do their work better. And to me, it's like, wow, wouldn't our society benefit from that kind of a collaboration where a bunch of us are just getting together, working, whatever we're interested in. If we're interested in, for example, digitizing our state or our country, we get together and we start solving that. And I think it's really beautiful.
And it is something that you have to embody. You have to leave that. But as soon as you leave that, it's very hard to go back for the old ways, I believe. I'm really, really passionate about it. It's not, for me, it had never been about just the code itself, because it is really cool for you to create something with people you would never see and create something powerful. It is nice, but it's way beyond that. It's, for me, it's a real possibility of change and a real possibility of making things different, of the things that we're so tired of. Gives chance for people. It's a give chance for you to make your own choices.
The one challenge that I see with that is, I think about it more, is with software and open source, technology moves really quickly. it iterates fast and we move faster and faster and there's more and more of it. So like, especially nowadays, people will adopt new libraries really quickly and really easily. But if you want to impact culture and society and like social norms, that is very slow moving. And it takes political influence and it takes money to make those changes. And so I was just thinking about this process. I'm like, it would be so cool. But then I'm like, okay, great. All these people get together, they work on some stuff, but then you still got to figure out how to get the political and the financial leverage to actually bring your reality to life.
Not only that, but like every engineer loves chipping away at technical debt, right? That's what you love, spending all your time chipping away at that. Imagine the amount of social debt that you have to chip away at, of years and years of, I mean, you were referring to the Jim Crow laws, all this deep-seated stuff in societies. How do you basically address some of that and like make that change? I mean, I have ideas of like, well, I guess you start small, got to start somewhere, right? But what's the approach that you're going to bring to this event, I guess?
This is how I see society change. So first, you have someone that thinks and understands that. Say, oh, whoa, people, we're doing that wrong. Someone that realized that. And that becomes some kind of theory. So this person, for the others to understand, grants some kind of theory. Some other people like this theory and become a little community, which we call social movements. So we have the theories for like a critical race theory, critical disabilities theory, gender theories. So those are the theories. And there's this bunch of people, there are the social movements that go get this theory and put that actionable in society. And those people are the root ones, the bodies that are suffering the things that they realize it's wrong in the system. I will steal this phrase from the critical disabilities theories, that is the one that I understand more, that says nothing about us without us. So that's the first thing. You never address something without that body in the space understanding what's going on. So that's the first thing. And the other is how you put everyone together to try to understand the point of view. And this is what Ospo for Good is doing, for example. You're putting policymakers, you're putting industries with the big money, you're putting the boots on the ground, the social movements together, and you're in the same place saying, whoa, okay, we have these people, let's use the Baltimore example of the historical Black colleges. Okay, this is the boots on the ground. We have severe racism and people that cannot leave that bad situation because they cannot have the proper education or the proper job. How do we improve that? Well, we have this movement and they are connected with teachers and with the colleges. Cool, perfect. What do we need for this college to improve? Oh, maybe we need someone to validate that, or we need space or the industry to give internships opportunities. Perfect. So now I have a connection from someone that needs an institution that are directly connection, the industry that will give the jump out of the situation. And I have a public policy saying, hey, you said you would give me money because I improved the ratings. The ratings are up. Give me the money because the system needs money and the flow, and that needs to be supported by a government that will make that flow and create the proper laws for that. It is slow. You're correct, but you have to be there and you have to be willing to do the work and paying attention.
Yeah, well, thank you for doing that work. And it's an exciting event. I think maybe I'm going to try and get there. I know we talked about it. That would be great. Any chance to be able to catch up with Paloma would be amazing, especially here in New York. We are all repping open source today on our shirts. Should we show them off real quick? Open source 101. And then, yeah, what is that? Oh, there's Selenium. Oh, and Nikolai's going to show it off. There you go. Very nice. He can move that way, folks.
This is years of open source practice right there.
Open source yoga.
Open source hip movements.
Open source hip movement. There you go. Mine is the Selenium Falcon. Yes, which is amazing. Celebrating 20th anniversary, 20th birthday, 20th anniversary. We've called it kind of both things. 20th anniversary of the project, which is this year. technically in October is the birthday, but the whole year we're celebrating the anniversary of Selenium project, which obviously Jason Huggins, founder of Sauce Labs, created as well as Appium. But when he created Selenium, he knew this was something he wanted to give to everybody. Love that about the backstory, and gave it to the Software Freedom Conservancy. So right off the bat, this is something that our company is rooted in. And I absolutely love that about Sauce Labs and love that about Selenium and the project. Many don't know this, actually. When I'm at like a conference and I tell them what we do and talk about Selenium, when we get to Selenium, they're like, wait, Selenium isn't you guys? Like, you guys, you don't own Selenium? And I'm like, no, nobody owns Selenium. That's an open source tool. And there's no backer other than the volunteers who spend all their time on it. And this is shocking to people because they're like, it's such a huge, massive project, like tens of millions of people using it all the time, huge corporations, their teams using it. Our team here, the DevRel team, spends time maintaining it out of their own free time, and some paid as well, because that's Sauce Labs' contribution in many other ways too. But it's pretty cool to be part of that.
It is really cool. And it is, big shout out. And this is what we're talking about. We need everyone to get involved. If Sauce doesn't sponsor me in the way that supports the work that I do, I would not be able to go to New York. I would not be able to do this work and spread that around. So big shout out. We need the companies to buy in, because we live in a neoliberal society. Everyone needs money, everyone needs to eat, and everyone deserves to have this dignity in their life. So big shout out for everyone that gets involved in the part.
Absolutely. Paloma, thank you so much for coming on and having a conversation with Nikolai and I. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate the chance to talk about it. It is my favorite topic, and I appreciate people want to talk about it. So thank you.
And thank you, Nikolai, as always. And thank you to you, our listener, for giving us the most precious gift that you can, your time. And hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did recording it. Until next time, this has been Test Case Scenario. Thank you for joining us on Test Case Scenario. Share your thoughts in the comments. We'll make sure to respond to each and every single one. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell to keep in touch. If you missed our last episode, it's popping up on your screen right now. Go, click it. Until next time on Test Case Scenario.